for me, that relationship is always ongoing. It's always evolving. But one thing that's consistent about it is just knowing that I'm committed. And the foundation of love is basically what I'm saying. Those three C's has to be foundational of the relationship of love is really what I'm trying to talk about. Well, welcome to another episode of Beyond Wisdom Podcast. Now, today we have my lovely wife, Michelle Paulos, and we are going to go ahead and make sure that we're introducing ourselves. Michelle Paulos, Arnold Paulos. Most people who knows us knows our story, and so what we're going to do today is, for those who always ask us the same question, they probably have heard already our story, but the ones that haven't heard our story and the ones that don't know our story, this is the podcast for you. We're going to have many more podcasts. So if this is your first time you're seeing us and listening to us, welcome. So now Arnold Paulos is a dentist in the San Francisco Bay Area, and Michelle Paulos is my life and business partner. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Michelle Paulos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm his wife. Hope you're doing well.
Well, if you are a patient of ours, and if you do know us, I always call my wife, my partner, my girlfriend, and sometimes we joke around about being that close together because we see each other all the time, every day, 24 hours a day. Maybe not 24 hours a day because of we do other things besides be together, but we work together. So if you don't know our story started after I graduated from dental school. We've been married now for over 25 years.
25 years.
And then we've known each other for over 30 years. No, actually not over 30 years.
37.
For just a little less than 30 years. So we've known each other for a long time. And when people ask us, like, how did you guys meet? Well, just an introduction of us. We are kids of immigrant families from the Philippines. I would be considered a first generation Filipino in the United States. I came to the United States when I was 9 years old, and that was in the early 70s. Now, Michelle Paulos, you came here because you were born here.
Yes.
Actually, your parents.
I was born here in 1972 in San Francisco.
So we are from the Bay Area, and everything that we do is surrounded by the Bay Area. And if you know the history of the Filipinos, there's a lot of Filipinos here in the Bay Area, especially Daly City. And if you would like to tell them how your parents got here, where are they from in the Philippines?
My parents are from Batangas City in the Philippines.
Yeah, and my family is from Tanay Rizal, which is a province in the Philippines, very close to Manila. Basically, our family is from the northern part of the Philippines, the Luzon part of the Philippines. There are three major islands in the Philippines. We're in the island of Luzon, which is very close to Manila. I grew up thinking that Manila was far away from our town, but it only takes us about like 2 hours to get there. Very close. It's really we live in Pleasanton, which is the East Bay area of San Francisco, and I would think that our town in the Philippines is basically about the same distance from the East Bay area going to San Francisco. That's how close it is. And Batangas is a little farther south of Manila. I would say that's a little bit, how long did it take us when we go to the Philippines? How long did it take us to get there?
How long?
It takes us about 3 hours to get to Manila from Batangas.
Oh, yes, if they go on that highway.
Yeah, so, we've been going back and forth to the Philippines many times. And then part of what we do as we have grown and vacation, we go to the Philippines a lot. So we've learned a lot about the Philippines. We go back as much as we can when we can. And so now, if you know our story, we basically met in South San Francisco.
Yes, October 14th, 1995 at the Airport Hilton.
Yeah, that Airport Hilton's not there anymore. If you know the Bay Area, SFO, San Francisco International Airport, is right very close to Daly City. And so when we actually met at I would call a Filipino event. It was one of those,
It was one of
it?
those Filipino social things that my parents were very social.
Yeah. So most of what we do, and when the Filipinos come to the United States, they gather and then they form, how would you call it, clubs, or what would they be called?
Society.
Yeah, they're like
Society.
Batangas Society.
Yeah.
Like we have our town in Tanay, they have a Tanay Club in America, and so one of the events that I met Michelle in was one of these events, and the reason why I met her was because of every Filipino seemed to be very close in terms of who they know. And when I got there, I actually knew a lot of people. And I met Michelle was because of they are friends, the Mendoza family are friends with some of my parents' friends. And so when I got there, I already knew a lot of people who knew Michelle's family and Michelle's mom and dad. And that's how I got to meet Michelle, was because of family, friends, acquaintances, and I got to meet her at that evening, which is a Filipino event. And so I got out of dental school. I would say about like a good 4 years out of dental school. And then Michelle was actually a nursing student at a college here in Northern California. And so when we met, we were just basically starting out very young, early 30s, mid 20s.
I was 23.
Yeah, so so basically
7 years older than
yeah,
you guys.
what we do as students, as dentists, and then things that I do, I always seem to set goals, and I set myself goal as to like, when am I going to meet somebody, and I actually met Michelle earlier than I would like to have met her, but it still worked out the right way. So after that, one of the things that we were trying to figure out was, how do I go about in going out with this person? Because I don't even know if you know this, but I still remember one of the things that I asked Michelle was, what do you look for in a guy? Now, do you know what's in my mind as to when you asked me that?
What was this?
I in the beginning, because one of the things I would say within the first month that I knew you, one of the things that you mentioned to me was what?
I said, you have to get along with my family.
Wow. You know what? I think she still remembers that.
Yeah.
One of the things that she mentioned was, I have to get along with her family. Well, that wasn't going to be very hard for me because, like I said, the Filipino culture is basically around family anyway. And so we grew up with a big family. And then Michelle's family, I mean, your dad was the oldest out of how many kids?
8.
That's
8
a lot.
kids.
I mean, who has 8 kids now? Like the Mendoza, Ben Mendoza, Michelle's dad, was the oldest, and he had 7 siblings. There was 8 of them, and he was the first one who immigrated to the United States. And if you know the stories of the Filipinos and how they come here in the 60s, the Filipinos came to the United States because if you were a professional, it was easier for you. The United States government was able to go ahead and allow immigrants who had degrees, who was able to go ahead from coming from the Philippines to the United States with, like, I think your dad he's an engineer.
Engineer.
What kind of engineer was it?
Mechanical engineer.
Yeah, because I remember most of the things that when we were talking to Michelle's dad, most of the things that he was doing was he was working in refrigeration. And so that's just something that a lot of the Filipinos was coming into the United States. They were coming in as physicians, they were coming as engineers, they were coming in as business people in the 60s. And then, Filipinos have become the United States for many years, but there was this immigrations of Filipinos in the 60s. Now, earlier when I mentioned when I first met Michelle, just like the joke that everybody seemed to talk about was, if you ask a Filipino person, they always have somebody who seems to be a nurse. And then if you ask Michelle Paulos, when I asked Michelle Paulos, like, what do you do? She told me, I'm a nursing student. I go, like, just typical of most of the Filipinos that goes to college, goes to school. And then especially, I have many cousins in the Philippines who immigrated abroad and became nurses in other countries, became nurses here in the United States. So when I came here as a 9-year-old, my parents were not nurses or anything like that. My parents came in here because of my relatives. My uncle was in the military, in the Navy. So there was a big, huge military base in the Philippines. So that's another way that the immigrants came to the United States, was because they were part of the U.S. military. So my story is that my family came here because my family, my uncle, my dad's oldest brother was in the Navy. And then he was able to go ahead and sponsor my dad to come to the United States as an immigrant. And that's how we came here in the early 70s. So if you notice, Michelle's family came here in the
1960s.
Yeah, in the late 60s. And my dad came to the United States late 60s. And then he brought his family here. And I was one of five kids. I have two older sisters and two younger sisters. I'm right in the middle. And I came here when I was 9 years old as an immigrant from the Philippines, didn't know how to speak English very well. But then one thing about the Filipinos, I mean, we already know how to speak English, but as you come over here in the United States, you still have to be able to speak English like everybody else going to school. But when you went to school, you already knew how to speak English.
Yes. I understand Tagalog, but I can't speak it.
Yes. So if you notice that, one of the things that we as Filipinos do is that we are very, very close-knit in terms of family. And if you ever ask, why would you even come to the United States? There was always that American dream that seems to be the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's just part of the United States Constitution. And that's basically what the Filipinos Constitution is basically modeled with, is the United States Constitution. And so when we go to another country, we are actually going to another country looking for a better life. That's the reason why my dad came to the United States, and that's the reason why Michelle's dad came to the United States.
That's right.
So, one of the other thing that we were talking about today, actually, before we started the podcast, was how am I going to get Michelle Paulos to talk? She actually talks a lot. Right now she's probably like, what are we talking about today? So I told her that we're really going to just try to introduce ourselves as to why is it that we're together, and why does our relationship actually work? Because that's one of the questions that people that know us ask us. Why does your relationship actually work?
No, they asked me actually, how can you work with your husband?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, how can
always ask me
because
that.
of Michelle, she's working at my dental office, and without her, I don't think our dental office could function as well as it does. But for me, the reason why, and then I try to keep everything as simple as I can. And one of the things that I try to do is maybe break it down into 3-4 parts at the most. And relationship to me, and what I impart when I even tell my kids and things that I do, and the things that I share with them and I teach them, is just, let's just try to keep things simple. And when I talk about relationship, we're talking about what I call the 3 C's, and that is commitment, communication, and what would be the last one that I was always talking about?
Consistency.
Yeah, and consistency. But out of all that, the first part is being committed. And there is no perfect marriage that people talk about, but a lot of the things that makes any relationship work, marriage is one, businesses with business customers, with business partners, is basically communication. And one of the things that's part of the communication, and then what I've heard today, the most important part of communication is listening. And even though I speak a lot more than Michelle does, I'm working on trying to listen as much as I can. And why do you think our relationship works, Michelle?
Because when you get upset, I try not to win over that the fight. I'll just let you win, and then I just be quiet and I let you win. Then in 5 minutes, then I'll tell you what's wrong.
Yeah, one thing about this in the relationship that we have is that it takes time. It takes time to know each other. This is in work in progress. I've known Michelle now for just a little less than 30 years, and we've been married for over 25 years. And it's a work in progress all the time. We're working on relationships all the time. But one thing that I could tell you is that we know each other a lot more today, for sure, than the first time we met each other. And so the more you spend time together, the more you get to know each other. I actually totally enjoy just being with my wife every day, every minute of the day. The more, like I cannot, there's no way I can go to a vacation without my wife. There's no way. And when I have to go someplace, I want to go home because like what am I doing here? I'm not going someplace without my wife. Just it's just not fun for me. So for me, that relationship is always ongoing. It's always evolving. But one thing that's consistent about it is just knowing that I'm committed, and the foundation of love is basically what I'm saying. Those three C's has to be foundational of the relationship of love is really what I'm trying to talk about. Now, the other thing that we try to strive for really is why do when we're talking about immigrants from the Philippines to the United States, and the reasons why we actually and what our goals are is really, I think, because we talk about like being healthy all the time. We also talk about family. And so when we're talking about happiness, healthy, and happiness and being happy, and most of that is really coming from friends and family, just having relationships with friends, family, and the people that we know. And when we're also talking about health, those are the things that we are always teaching our kids about: being happy and being healthy. And when we're talking about health, we're talking about health in mind, body, and spirit. Now, sometimes it's just like everybody else. We fall off, and even though we try to go ahead and be healthy, it's just, the difficulty of doing all the things that you have to do to be healthy. But being healthy is really just very simple. I mean, I talk about it all the time with people is, you're supposed to move and eat correctly, and make sure you get enough rest. But we make it more complicated than it is, just like anything else. So that's why I said with relationship, it's really the three C's that I'm talking about. It's mainly commitment, communication, and being consistent. And then knowing that Michelle knows that even if we're having an argument, and after a while I figure like, there's
wrong.
Yeah, there's really no purpose in this argument. And one of the jokes that we have is the Michelle that always remind me of is a happy what?
Happy life, happy wife.
Yeah, she's not the first person that says that. I mean, I've heard that so many times. I just never knew what it meant, but how true that is. You as a young couple, you might not know that, but if you want happiness, your wife has to be happy. And I think another joke that we have, and I don't even want to share this one, but I might share that.
Just
But
share it.
no, I'll share that at a different time when our audience knows our story a little bit more. But going from being an immigrant from the Philippines and then meeting Michelle Paulos and living in the Bay Area here in Pleasanton, California. Our office is in Dublin, California. We're in the East Bay area of San Francisco. And then knowing the culture that we're from, and then starting a business, a dental business, that's basically what we do. That's what we do. And then having a family. Right now, we've got what? Three young, early 20 adult kids. We've gotten two of them graduated from college. And then we have a special needs child who is the youngest, Andrew. So we've got the oldest, who's Miranda, and she graduated how long ago?
2019.
Yes, and then Rhea graduated just recently also. When was that? Like 2 years ago, during the pandemic. And then Andrew Paulos, who's with us all the time. And so we've got three kids that we've raised together. And then part of that is just, I wouldn't have been able to do raising kids without Michelle Paulos. There's no way. That's why I said a partnership, a relationship is really just being one together and being able to be in that same mindset where we have a family and we are going ahead and raising this family together. And I give it to all the people who could do it all by themselves, because it's hard enough doing it together. But it makes it easier when there's two of you. And then and with being here in the Bay Area, very close to family, I mean, we couldn't have done it without help from other members of our family, my parents and Michelle's parents. So the first place that we lived was just very close to my parents, just I would say about 5 minutes away.
Mhm.
And then it was very close to your mom and dad.
Yeah.
So we were able to raise 3 kids with the help of
Right.
other family members.
Yep, their grandparents.
Yeah,
it
and
was
it-
easy.
And even to this
And
day,
our sister-in-law, brother-in-law,
yes.
we
And-
have babysitters.
Yeah, we have, even to this day, we could have never have done it without any help from family members. That's why I think for us, family is very important, and then we cherish the relationship that we have with our families, and that really comes from the Filipino tradition. I'm Filipino. There's no way you could take that out of who I am, and then we grew up that way. Even though we live in the United States, because I consider myself an American, and I'm not going to go and live anyplace else but the United States. This is it. This is where I live, because of we came here for the sole purposes of what this nation's all about: the pursuit of happiness, liberty, and just the right to life. And that's basically what we have, and that's basically what we're trying to do as we go through and help people through their journey through life. Is with this podcast, what we're trying to do is going beyond and being practical, just beyond practical wisdom. And that's the reason why we've titled our podcast Beyond Wisdom. And then part of this whole thing is really just letting people know who we are. This is just the first part of multiple parts of who Michelle and Arnold Paulos is. And then what we're trying to do is trying to keep this podcast as short and concise as possible, but sometimes we might go over when we have a little bit more conversational things. But we're gonna continue with the podcast. And if you haven't heard other podcasts we had, we've gotten, I think, 3 of them that introduced my kids. My kids are Miranda and Rhea Paulos. And at some point we might introduce Andrew Paulos, but I don't think he's going to be able to go ahead and talk into the camera that's like this. But we are here to service and to let you in our journey, and we're also going to be talking about the journeys that people have, and in terms of the wisdom that we could impart based on our experiences, just being an example to everybody. So for our next episodes, hopefully we'll see you on our next Beyond Wisdom podcast.